3 years ago, I was stuck. No matter how hard I worked, I just couldn't seem to increase the amount I was earning. I kept putting in more and more hours every week, trying to take my income from 30 grand a year to way over 6 figures, but I just couldn't seem to get that number to budge. I'd hear countless stories about people earning tens of thousands per month, selling weird things on the internet, while I was just sat there at my desk putting in 14-hour days, wondering where I was going wrong. At this point, I realized I was cooking up a recipe for disaster, so I decided to do something about it. In this video, I'm going to share what I've learned was holding me back, and how I've tripled my income over the last few years. Alright, so my very first step was actually to figure out what was working for me at the time. Because I was doing okay, I was making a living as a freelancer, but I wanted to do much more than just scrape by. So I sat down and wrote out my strengths and weaknesses, and then I asked the people close to me the exact same thing. Eventually, I had a pretty conclusive list of the areas I was strong and the areas that I was weak in. And once it was clear where I was strong and where I was weak, I started to research people who actually knew about earning money. And what I was looking for was confirmation that one of these areas where I was weak must have been one of the things where these rich people were very strong. And this is where I found something interesting. It turns out I'd been approaching this all wrong. I thought that I was missing one set of skills, and once I learned those, I could make a lot of money. But when I was looking at these different people who are making a lot of money, it turns out that they all have wildly different skills. Some are eccentric leaders and others are technical geniuses, but they have the personality of a cardboard box. But the one thing they did have in common is that they didn't have limiting beliefs stopping them from thinking they could earn a lot of money. See, really, making more money is about 20% the hard skills you have and 80% your mindset, which is why someone much stupider than you can earn way more money if they just have the right mindset.
But that is it.
So for me at the time, and probably for you right now, it's not these hard skills that you really need to work at. Sure, they're important, but it's actually mindset that holds most of us back. And being from the UK, the typical British culture is to not talk about mindset, not talk about money, and not talk about being ambitious, because ambition is seen as bragging, and in a self-deprecating society, that is not a good thing. So I knew there was a lot of work to do. And that first belief that I had to break is the belief that you have to work hard to earn a lot of money. It actually turns out what you work on is way more important than how hard you work. Because I'm sure whatever you do, you'll probably work hard. Your level of output won't change that much. For example, I'm sure you know people who work a really hard job, like being a nurse or doing a manual labor job. And in many cases, these people will work way harder than someone in a cushy tech job. But that person in a tech job is probably earning 2, maybe 3 times the amount as the person doing the manual labor, even though that doesn't seem fair. The question then becomes, how do you apply your effort to something where the potential upside is very high? Because at the end of the day, the problem that you work on is going to be way more important than how hard you work on it. And for me, breaking this belief led me to focus all my attention on trying to work with clients who actually had money. Before that, I was trying to work with a lot of small businesses, but the problem would be that if I was wanting to earn a lot of money with these small businesses, I'd either need to work with hundreds and hundreds of them, or I'd need to pretty much bankrupt them to get paid the amount I wanted to get paid. So instead, I focused my attention on trying to work with startups and enterprise companies because at the end of the day, they have a lot of money. Now, the second belief is one that I constantly battle with, and that is switching my thinking from absolute income over to relative income. So let's say that you make 30,000 a year, and let's just pretend that taxes don't exist. And to keep it super simple, rent and all your other expenses just come to about 1,000 a month, which leaves you with 18,000 for the year. Now, the typical way to think about this is to think of that 30,000 as your absolute income. You'll get no more and you'll get no less. You know that you have 30,000 to work with. So everything that you spend is then eating away at that overall total. So this makes you want to spend as little money as possible in every area because ultimately you want some money left over. So this means that you'll rent the cheapest place you can, you'll buy the cheapest food, you'll go to the cheapest gym, and you'll pay for the cheapest laptop, because ultimately you want more money left over. But if you switch from thinking in terms of absolute income over to relative income, it would completely change the way you act. So thinking in terms of relative income is to switch your mindset over and think of that 30,000 as where you currently are, but you're working your way higher. So your money is then used to actually increase your earnings. And what you end up doing here is switching from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And it enables you to invest in things that will improve your performance, which will ultimately lead to an increase in income. And when you start doing this, you'll realize that investing in yourself is the single highest leverage thing you can possibly do. So for me, this mindset change has led me to buy any book that I possibly want to read without asking any questions. And I've been investing in a lot of different courses to learn certain skills because ultimately I know that they'll pay back. And then on the health side of things, I've been investing in going to a better gym and paying more for better foods. Ultimately, all of these things are going to help me improve at a faster rate, which is eventually going to lead to me earning more income. And the slightly meta hidden benefit from spending a little bit more money is that you start to think more like someone who earns more money. So this third one is that a belief can be useful, but it doesn't necessarily have to be true. Okay, so I realized this when I started to go to a bit of a fancier gym. I noticed that in the car park there was a lot of fancy cars, and at the time I didn't even have a car. But what that car park told me was that the kind of person who goes to this gym is the kind of person who drives a fancy car. And ultimately, someone who drives a fancy car is probably going to earn quite a lot of money. So the story that I'd end up telling myself is that I am that type of person. It didn't even matter if it was true. I don't really care about having a fancy car. But if I thought of myself as someone who could afford a fancy car and I associated in those places and I took the actions of someone who could do that, then it just completely changed the things I was doing. It completely changed the way I thought about myself. And then I noticed that I could start doing this for every area of my life. If like me, you had those limiting beliefs about what's possible, who's to say that those limiting beliefs are actually true? You only believe them because of your environment and your past life experiences. And because you can never fully know if a belief is true, wouldn't it be way more useful to just believe things were actually useful to you? Because you can believe that money is scarce, or you can believe that money is abundant. And you can believe that making a lot of money is evil, or you can believe it's good. Because ultimately, you can believe anything you want. So for me, I just started to believe things that were actually useful to me. If I didn't land a client, then I would just think about the next client I was going to land. I wouldn't dwell on missing out on an opportunity. And instead of looking at other people and wondering, why am I not earning loads of money? I just started to think that money was abundant, and all I had to do was to build the tool set to actually capture some of that money. And for me, the most helpful belief was switching from thinking that I wasn't very good at something because I wasn't naturally talented and I didn't pick it up and get really good very quickly. Instead, I just started to believe that given a long enough time horizon, eventually I would figure it out. So eventually the game became just not quitting. And like anything, getting rid of these limiting beliefs takes a lot of time. And right now there's a bunch of different things that I'm working on to try get through to that next level. But the goal here is not to delude yourself into thinking that you're gonna be rich and you're gonna make loads of money. Instead, it's to believe things that are gonna help you take positive action. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you're still here, I made this video right here, especially for you.